All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to open the hood on a modern vehicle and how to check the fluids. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up the hood latch, which is underneath the dashboard. Now on this vehicle, you can see it's right underneath the dash. It's kind of dark, but you can see there's clearly labeled a little car with the hood up, and you need to pull on that latch. So that releases the hood latch, but now you have to release the safety catch, which is going to be right here. So the next thing you need to do is find the safety latch, undo it, and then open up the hood. Every modern car has some sort of safety latch. It's there to protect that car from the hood accidentally flying open. So in this case, you can see you need to push that to the driver's side and lift the hood. Now here's a view of underneath the hood, generally what we're going to be checking. Every vehicle is different, so the way you check the fluids might vary for the vehicle you're working on, but here's some general rules. When checking the oil, the engine oil, we're going to check it with the engine off. So we look for the engine oil dipstick. There's the filler and there's the dipstick. And it's yellow and it's marked engine oil. So again, the engine is not running here. So what we need to do is take the dipstick out, wipe it off, put it back in, and then take it out again and see its reading. That's so we get an accurate reading. So we don't have any drips on there giving us an inaccurate reading. So as you can see, we put that dipstick back in all the way, push it down, pull it all the way back out, and then you should see between these two hash marks, or in the hash marks between these two dots, somewhere there, the oil should be registered. That's when you're in the okay range. Why? Well, what happens to oil? When it heats up, it expands. So if it starts down here, it'll probably end up there when the engine is warm. So depending on the temperature of the engine, the level might vary. The next fluid we're going to check is the transmission. Now notice this particular dipstick is locking. And on a transmission, on most automatics, but you're going to have to check for your specific type of transmission, but on most automatics, the transmission is checked with it running. So I'm going to start it up. Good. I have the engine running here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to unlock that dipstick, pull it out, wipe it down so I can get an accurate reading, put it back in, pull it out again, and then look at my reading. And it's good to hold that dipstick nice and horizontal. Otherwise, the fluid might flow in one direction or another, giving you an inaccurate reading. So again, there's cold and hot marks on transmission dipsticks as well, because the transmission fluid, when it expands, is when it heats up. So when it's cold, it should be near the lower mark, and when it's hot, it should be near the upper mark. So I'm going to show it here. I'm going to pause this. There we go. This is right about at the low mark right now. But on this car, it makes sense because this engine is cold and the transmission is cold. Once that fluid heats up, it should get to the full mark. Now, if this engine was hot, I would say we're a little bit low on that transmission fluid, but it isn't. It's cold. So once you get that dipstick back in, you need to lock it so it doesn't leak. The next thing we're going to check is the coolant. Now you need to understand whether we're checking on a coolant reservoir or right on the radiator. The coolant tank will be under pressure when that coolant is hot, so it's unsafe to remove the cap. Luckily, most coolant reservoirs are clear. Expansion tanks or reservoirs are clear, so you can just look at it on the side and you don't have to take the cap off. And as you can see, there is a mark right there, a little bit hard to read, but it says full cold, and it is a little bit on the low side because this engine is cold. So I should be topping up that fluid right to about that line right there. When it heats up, it'll also expand and go to a higher mark. Again, I don't have to take the cap off because that's unsafe. Now the brake fluid, you could take the cap off, but it's not necessary most of the time because you have a plastic reservoir. If it doesn't, you will need to take the cap off. And here you can see through the reservoir and you can see the brake fluid level. And make sure you check the whole reservoir because part of the reservoir might be higher than the other part because there are two branches. And as you can see, my brake fluid is right at the max. So low brake fluid might mean that it's leaking, or it might mean that the brake pads are worn out. And then finally, we have the power steering fluid. Now to check the power steering fluid, you also check it with the engine off. And the power steering cap, you look for power steering fluid reservoir could be on the pump or it could be on a reservoir near the top of the engine bay. So again, you take that cap off and many times right in the cap is a little dipstick that's going to show you what the level is at. And as you can see on this one, it is right within the level it should be. So that's how you check the fluids on a vehicle and open up the hood. And don't forget also, make sure everything you take off, you put on nice and tight. You don't want any loose dipsticks or caps. Thank you.